Hi everyone, today I want to focus on some of the deal levers when it comes to doing a management agreement partnership structure. What I'll do is I'll model out a medium-sized site, and we're going to use one just based in Australia. I know the market dynamics are different depending on where you watch. I know I get a lot of people watching from all over the world, but the purpose of today's video, I think, is market agnostic to a degree because we're going to be focusing on the revenue share, the profit share, rent hurdles, all that kind of stuff, which can invite discussion in the comments or reach out to me directly. I'm going to be using a commercial financial model. There's a free version within the channel, but keep an eye out. I think over the next month or so, I'm going to upload this fully detailed, completely unlocked version for a pretty modest rate in terms of if it's something that you think you'll find valuable. So if you would like to have something like this at your fingertips where you can kind of adapt it to your market or change the different inputs, keep an eye out for that. Excuse the setting. I know this is a bit different from the table I usually have. I shot a video right before this for one of my other channels where I talk about startup businesses, but general life principles as well. And yeah, the armchair felt fitting because it was a pretty intimate one. And I even had my dog here because she had to stay with me in the garage while my wife was taking care of my son. So let's jump into this. We've got the management agreement dashboard in front of us. But what I'll do is I'll actually go, no, before I do that, if you look at row 22, 23, 24, those are the first real things to keep an eye on when you're doing a deal. And we'll go into the detailed dashboards shortly to show you how we can figure out those inputs. But realistically speaking, aside from the business case in itself, you know, how many desks and those rates, and if you're interested to see how I break that down in detail, I think the video right before this one, I might even put a link in the description where I go through a whole model A to B. You can have a look there. But today we're going to focus on the deal levers. It's important to understand what your building costs are when you're speaking to your landlord. So what does it cost per square foot or square meter for them to upkeep the general maintenance of the asset and the public spaces? What the rent is, because as part of this exercise, in a management agreement structure, you can negotiate a percentage of the rent to be paid as a hurdle. So rather than a normal rent agreement where you pay the full rent, could be a third, could be 50%. It really depends on the deal structure that you're looking at. The revenue share we've currently set at 7%, but we'll see how we tinker with that because it really does depend, I think, on where the rent hurdle lands. That influences your profit share and your revenue share percentages. Because profit, and that's why I call it the distributable profit pool here, the reason why it's 90%, 10% is because we have a rent hurdle that is treated like a cost item before you have your profit pool, distributable profit pool. What a mouthful. I should have called it something else. There are certain management agreement structures that do not have a rent hurdle. It is a pure revenue share, profit share style arrangement between the operator and the landlord. They're rare these days, but they're deals that have been done. And therefore, the percentages look a bit different because the profit pool is much larger, right? There hasn't been a percentage of rent that's been taken out as a cost before you calculate what's left over to split between the operator and the landlord. So that's what you're looking for when you look at the annualized simplified dashboard here. And it always becomes important when you look down to have a look at what that rental equivalent is. The reason why the rental hurdle is $198 in this scenario before we start tinkering is because the market rent is $600 per square meter per year in this scenario. So I believe that's a third. Yeah, it's around a third, just below a third, which is the rent hurdle. But if the market rent's 600, that's why by year one it's 600, year two is 622, then 645, 669, 693 by year five. It increases because I believe we have an escalation set at 3.7%, right? So remember, the rent you agree to is not the same rent in year 2 and 3. And that's why it's really important, even your desk rates, you're ready as a co-working operator to adjust for the cost inflation and the rent escalations that you're dealing with. Meaning whatever desk rate you budget for the first year, you should be adding a higher percentage than that rent escalation at a minimum. So if I jump over to the detailed dashboard, in my previous videos, you'll see me go through everything, right? But not for today because I want to keep this one relatively short. We've got the floor plate set at 2,200 square meters. Let's pretend it's a 2,400 one. These days I'm doing deals around the 1,500 square meter mark, unless it's you know, in a large building with a lot of tenant demand, the leasing is strong in that area. I like to do more appetizingly small to medium sized operations around the 1,500 square meter mark. I rarely consider a 2,000 plus deal these days, just because I like to have the supply and demand, I guess, scale in my favor, having limited stock. I'd much rather 100% full site with a wait list than a 70% occupied larger site, right? Which is what a lot of operators suffer with in certain markets, because the appeal of a larger site is the economies of scale kick in. So you're making more money since a lot of your costs are fixed, like your on-site staff and your systems. But if you can't fill it, you can't fill it. And it's getting, excuse me, it's getting very competitive out there. So if I go for 2,400 square meters in this scenario, the desk density ratio, I believe, is 6.2. I might decrease that. No, I'll increase it to 6.5. I frankly believe in, with the future of work and where the market's going, you need to allow for a little more spaciousness, even with your co-working desks, right? It isn't an exercise to see how many desks you can cram in the NLA anymore and re-rent at a premium. You need to be very considerate around your front of house, your amenities, and even how many desks you put within an office. So it's always better to assume less is more. And then when you do your test fit and your due diligence, if you can fit in more desks, amazing. But you don't want to be in a situation where you model for more desks and you lose 20 or 30 of them by the time you get to that level, because then that's revenue you can't claw back, and you'll probably be forced in a situation where you start making up omni-channels or other forms of revenue, or you tweak the percentage of occupancy or the meeting room utilization just to make yourself feel better in your budget, but it just puts that pressure on you unnecessarily. The head count, I've got at 2. I would not mind making this 0.5, so you've got 2.5 staff, just again, because the larger you get, the more staff you require. Depending on where you are in your market, you could get away with even more headcount. Just in Australia right now, on-site staff is relatively expensive, so we always need to be considerate on how many people we put in there. So 2.5, I think, is manageable. On a larger 2,400 square meter site, I'll probably drop the mature occupancy to 80%. Bigger you go, I think 80% is more your North Star, not 85 for the smaller sites. And the ramp up, I'll even change to 15 months, again, because it's a larger site. Meeting room utilization, because it's a bigger site and you've got a larger community, we can push it to 20%, not 20%. And events, I'll keep it at 10. I'm not too sure. I think let's have a look at what all this pricing looks like if we keep the market rent and the building costs the same. If we go to the dashboard, well, unfortunately, we're slightly under, and this is the power of the model. If you've got it, and I've also got this how to use this tab and explains everything, blah, blah, blah. Even when you tinker with things like that, like just pretend you're doing your own thing right now, you can kind of see in the market rent target for the landlord, they're $52 below rent by year 2. And by year 2 or partially in year 2, you should be hitting your 80% stabilized occupancy. So we know we're below their rent target. And as you as an operator, you're netting $280,000 a year, which is pretty good. So if all of those assumptions we just chucked in are right, you might need to start looking at your rev share, profit share, or do something a bit different if you can't adjust your costs or your revenue assumptions at all, to make sure that the landlord is whole. Because again, in this scenario, they're fronting the capex in this Australian example. That being said, we're not done with the assumptions. Because it's a larger site, we pushed it up to 6.5 square meter density from the 6.2 or the 6. Because you've got more spaciousness, you could very likely ask for more dollar per desk within your office. So even bumping the 700 to 725 helps a lot, right? And again, in year 1 and year 2, we're assuming we've got some sort of discount. So I believe in year 1, we've got a 20%, and year 2, we've got a 10%. So even though you're listing it at a blended rate of $725 a desk in the office, you're really selling them for $653. So it gives your on-site staff that flexibility to sell that. Remember, this is a blended rate, right? So that's not meaning you're selling every desk for $725 or listing it. You might be listing some at $500, you might be listing some at $1,000, depending on where they are situated within your floor plan. We'll keep the open plan desk the same. 55 is a bit on the higher side. So we could even do this for a larger site. It was 85% because it was a smaller site, meaning 85% of your total workstations went to a private office when it was like a 1,200 or 1,500 square meter site originally in this model. Because now we're larger at 2,400, I think we can change the 80% to 90%. So we want 90% of those desks to go into private offices, call it we've got about 37 going into the open plan. I think that's fair because the open plan desks aren't really a source of revenue for a business like this anymore. They're more used to thoughtfully break up the floor plan from a design angle so that it's not just offices. You might have like a box of offices and open plan desks in the middle, so there's some distance that people can see through and it feels a bit more spacious. I don't really feel like the open plan desks are necessarily an incubator for larger customers anymore. They're there for more an amenity for the offices, I would say. Because it's a larger site, I would have 2 8-person meeting rooms as well. So one large, 2 8P, 4 to 6P. Event spaces look fine to me. We'll keep the rent and the building costs, sure. So even with those adjustments, if we go back to the MA dashboard, we're getting closer. I would argue that this is fine. Even though it's red in year 2, it's okay. Because remember, our ramp up right now is modeled for 15 months because it's a slightly larger site. If this was 12 months, I just hear my son crying outside. They must be out in the garden. Yeah, if it's 12 months, so if you actually ramp it up within a year from your starting occupancy of 20, 30% to 80%, you're in the green. So it's the conservative 15 months here, which is why you're red in year 2. But again, these are all conservative assumptions. Like at the end of the day, whenever you do sensitivity analysis, if this is like 95%, because you do really well, you know, you're $150 over rent. That's not what you put in front of the landlord as your base case, obviously, but it's always good to show them, hey, if we crush it, this is why we're doing this type of deal under a management agreement, because then you really get higher than your rent expectation because it's revenue share, profit share. Whereas traditionally, if it wasn't and we just do a rent, we just take all of that as our margin, as the lease deal, right? So now what I want to do is if we go down, to some of these deal structures here, base rent hurdle, let's say the landlord pushes back and wants 50% of it. So half the rent, not 33%. Well, if we go here, that's already changed a bit because now the profit pool, the gross profit pool has shrunk, okay? So you as an operator, if I change that back to 33%, right now in year 2, as an operator, you're earning 300K per annum, according to these assumptions. If they pushed the base rent hurdle to 50%, you're now earning 274. So call it circa 30K less per annum. That adds up, especially if you're doing well. So what you'd want to do is you'd push back and say, okay, well, if you want 50% of the rent as a rent hurdle, then I need more revenue share or profit share. Because even if you just try and get back to the 300K for yourself, because they looked at the numbers, everything was fine, but they pushed for the rent hurdle higher, something's got to give somewhere else for you as the operator, right? Which is why I always like to model the operator returns here, even if it's just for you and you don't show it when you put forward the P&L. So realistically, the landlord will not allow you to push that management fee, the revenue share, because that's further up the waterfall payment structure. They'd always prefer you to change your profit share scenario. So maybe you go to 15% profit. If you go to 15%, then we're slightly higher than 300K. We're at 316K, but the landlord may be more amenable to that because it means that you're incentivized to do really well, right? And you can see even though they're red in year 2 and year 3, this is still under a very base case scenario, and the profit share is happening after they get their $300 guaranteed. So in many of the cases, when you move the profit share around, the landlord's willing to give you more because in their eyes, it's incentivizing you to do better, right? And more profit share is not a bad thing because again, as an operator, even if we move this to 90% occupancy, say you've stabilized it and you've done it really well, then you're at 380K per year. But when it's at 90% occupancy, then the landlord doesn't care. Landlord could be, instead of $85 delta or above their 622 rent expectation by year 2, so at 707, they could potentially be at 725, but they're happy with this outcome because it means it's 90% occupied and they've got an operating partner that's incentivized to get it there. I'll stop there because those are some of the metrics to really think about when you're doing your next deal. Obviously, because this is an Australian scenario, we've got certain idiosyncrasies of the market here, like landlord paying for the capex and what a tenant incentive looks like. In your market, if those mechanisms don't exist or landlords aren't paying, obviously this looks very different. So feel free to ask me in the comments what you're thinking of or where you're thinking of, because to date, more recently, the last 10 feasibilities I've done on people who've been watching even this channel has been in Kenya, has been in Canada, the US, Saudi Arabia, India, all over the world, Mexico. And the thing that I always find is that even though the markets all have their own dynamics, the methodology remains the same in terms of how you want to think about this co-working style business. So thank you for watching, and hopefully this was helpful. And keep an eye out for the model when it drops in case it's helpful for you. Thank you.